Hey Lang Nerds, welcome to eLang Explained. This video is part of our Writing Prep and Strategy series, where we break down the different sections of the English language exam to give you some tips and strategies on how best to approach the short answer, AC, and essay. Get excited for today's video, where we're going to be breaking down one section of the exam and talking about our best teacher-approved tips for success in English language. Hey Lang Nerds, welcome to eLang Explained. This video is part of our Writing Prep and Strategy series, where we break down different approaches to analysing language features within a set text. Get excited, because today we're going to be talking about the meal structure. Before we go any further, it's really important to acknowledge that across Victoria, there are so many different approaches and so many different strategies that students and teachers are using to unpack and analyse language features within a text. Because we are all different learners with different brains, there'll be some strategies that work super well for you and others that just aren't as effective. Hopefully, you'll find this structure useful for analysing language features. But if you've got a different approach, make sure to add it in the comments to share more successful strategies. So, what is a meal? When you're thinking about analysing language examples and organising that analysis in a piece of writing, one structure that you could use is the meal structure. Starts off with meta-language, then presents an example. If your meal is being used as part of a short answer or AC response, it'll have line numbers attached. But if you're using a meal for an essay, it'll include a date. Then there's the A, analysis of the effect of the language feature within the set text. Thinking specifically about your chosen example and your chosen language feature, this step asks you to carefully explain what the language feature is doing within the set text. And then the link. If you're writing a short answer meal, then this link goes back to the key idea of the SAQ you're responding to. If you're writing an AC meal, this link goes back to the key idea of your body paragraph, which is going to be an element of the FOTAC. The function, intents and purposes, register, tenor, audience, or a contextual factor. And if you're writing an essay meal, then this link goes back to the key idea of your paragraph. So let's have a look together at what a meal might look like. This is a real-life contemporary example celebrating International Cat Day in 2025. Hopefully you all celebrated with the furry friends in your life. This is a Facebook post from Tasmania Police, and there are so many language features we could talk about in this post. But for our meals today, we're going to focus on the sentence, "She may be small, but we're warning you, don't hiss her off." So if we were planning out a meal, we might look at the alliteration for our meta-language. Our example is the whole sentence, but also specifically the she and the small, where the alliteration in that pronoun she and adjective small allows Tasmania Police to emphasise the size of Constable Jem. Now, it's really important when we're presenting meals, particularly for essays, that we give context to our examples. So in this E step within the meal, we not only have to say which part of the sentence we're going to be analysing, but we also have to signpost that this is a Facebook post from Tasmania Police for International Cat Day, talking about their new cat constable, Jem, who's pictured here. And I think apart from the language, the thing that I love most about this post is just Constable Jem's little face, because she looks so upset to be in this photo. Like, Constable Jem wants to be on the streets solving crime, not on Tasmania Police's Facebook page. The last part of our meal is the link. And you can see here that we've decided, instead of putting a specific link in and planning out what our link is going to be, we've chucked in a sentence starter so that you could use this sentence for any link that you're writing in a short answer, AC, or essay response. So here's a sample meal. You can see that we've got green for meta-language, red for our example, A for our analysis, and L for that sentence starter of a link. You've already seen all of the analysis on the previous slide. We're talking here about how the alliteration creates a tie between the pronoun and the adjective, allowing Tasmania Police to reinforce key information about Constable Jem's small size. The link is where it gets really interesting, because if this were a short answer question asking us to analyse the ways that patterning reinforce the function, our link could be something like, this reflects the referential function because use of the alliteration allows Tasmania Police to clearly emphasise and present key information about Constable Jem's small size, as she's a cat. If this were a short answer question on purpose or intent, we might talk about how this reflects the purpose of clarifying information, and then again talk about how it's emphasizing Constable Jem's physicality. If this were an essay example, we could link to expectations in context and talk about the way that Tasmania Police are deliberately playing with language to reflect expectations of innovative language use on social media. Once you've mastered the meal structure, if you're feeling a little bit more confident, you might like to test out what we call a meal. And yes, I fully appreciate that that is a little bit awkward to say. But at this level, we've got 2 pieces of meta-language from the same example with 2 points of analysis. So remember, each time you add an M in your meal, we also want to add another A, another point of analysis, because it's really important to be as specific as possible when we're analyzing language features. And each time we identify a piece of meta-language, we also want to explain the effect of that language feature within the set text. So here, we've added in the second piece of meta-language with the pun in "don't hiss her off." In our analysis, we've added a point about how hiss here creates humor through a pun because it's reinforcing Constable Jem as a cat who should not be challenged. But of course, we also have to acknowledge that hiss is acting as a substitution for swearing. And I'm sure you can figure out which swear word Tasmania Police have deliberately avoided using on social media. Now, this is what a sample might look like. So you can see here, we've got our 2 pieces of meta-language, our 1 example, still contextualized, and then our 2 points of analysis. But the structure has changed a little bit. For increased coherence of our work, we've changed the order that we're presenting information. In this sample meal, we're starting off by identifying our 2 pieces of meta-language, but then jumping straight into the longer example. Because when we're writing a meal at this level, we've got those 2 pieces of meta-language, it's more important to quote the full sentence and then re-quote the smaller sections that we're going to be analyzing. This is a sample of what your meal might look like with 2 pieces of meta-language and 2 points of analysis. You'll see here that a lot of the information is the same as our first meal that only talked about the alliteration. One of the big changes here, though, is structural. It's about the logical ordering of our information. And so for increased coherence in any meal at this level where there are 2 pieces of meta-language, it's important to consider how we're ordering our information. For this meal, it was most important for us to initially signpost the 2 pieces of meta-language we were going to be talking about, but then jump straight into the example. So you'll see that we've got alliteration and pun clearly signposted at the beginning, and then we quote that full sentence. Then we go back to our meta-language and re-quote the sections of the example we're going to be discussing before we make our point of analysis. Then we make our second point of analysis, but again, we restate the meta-language and re-quote that smaller section of the example that we're analyzing with the pun. And finish our paragraph off with one big overall link. Now, if you looked at this and thought, oh, I like it, but could we push it even further? You are going to be so excited. That's all we have time for today. Remember to be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time for more Elang Explained.